A recent explosive development in Lil Durk's case has set the internet on fire. The rapper has been dealing with legal issues for a few years, and he is presently being held pending trial.
Wiretaps, recordings and all that, like he was in too deep with a J. Reed.
Leaked audio recordings, however, provide proof of Lil Durk's purported involvement in 2 murder-for-hire schemes, which has fundamentally changed the course of events. What is Lil Durk's impending release? Stay locked in as we dissect the leaked wiretaps and audios. If you have been following this case, you are aware that it has been going haywire since Durk was booked in October 2024. However, these recently leaked court documents and audio recordings, which have completely changed our understanding of the case, you must realize how extensive the federal government's evidence collection has become. Opposed to Lil Durk, prosecutors have allegedly gathered almost 230 gigabytes of digital evidence against Durk and his co-defendants, including over 20,000 pages of documentation outlining suspected violent crimes, audio recordings, and surveillance footage, according to court filings. Agree that the case is extremely complicated, but neither party anticipated how leaked parts of this evidence would end up in the streets, igniting a media frenzy and possibly influencing public opinion months before the trial even began. This mountain of evidence is the reason why Durk's trial, which was originally set for January 7, 2025, was moved to October 14, 2025. So what are these leaked tapes precisely, and what do they reveal based on several stories from April 2025? Wiretapped conversations purportedly recording Durk talking about payments connected to the murder-for-hire schemes are among the most shocking disclosures. In one video, it was suggested that federal authorities had set up a rat cell with one of Durk's associates who had recorded incriminating conversations regarding payment for the alleged murder-for-hire plots earlier in the month. Another video discussed wiretap evidence and Brick Baby's purported confession related to Lil Durk's murder-for-hire charges.
Wiretaps, recordings and all that, like he was in too deep with a J. Reed.
These recordings, support the court filings that have demonstrated how the federal government has been obtaining evidence in this case. More significantly though, they highlight what may be the most compelling evidence the government has against Durk's snitches and recorded chats. AJ, who was arrested for possessing a stolen murder vehicle and subsequently imprisoned in Illinois. River Correctional Center is one of the case's most notable developments. This is especially harmful because it allegedly links Durk directly to the payment for the Stefan Mack murder, which prosecutors say was retaliation for the 2021 killing of Durk's brother, Dante Fang Banks. The FBI placed an informant in AJ's cell, who recorded conversations in which AJ allegedly provided all the details about planning and carrying out the Mack murder, as well as payments related to the hit. According to the evidence, AJ mentioned another person named Marley more than 10 times in the recordings, characterized as playing a significant part in the killing. It appears that the federal government has obtained several such recordings, but the audio evidence doesn't end there. According to a CBS Chicago News report, prosecutors claim that Mack was outside the Youth Peace Center in Roseland when he was shot dead. The FBI connected the 2 men accused of the crime to this kind of evidence, which includes first person, accounts of criminal activity, include discussions about payment for the hits. If genuine, these texts could give prosecutors a direct link to the murders. Suggests that the FBI may have more audio evidence from wiretaps or other confidential informants that hasn't yet been made public than the recordings of the jailhouse informants used to commit Mack's murder to Durk. Between Durk and the money, paid for the purported murder of higher levels is an essential component in establishing the claims of conspiracy. According to the indictment in the Quando Rondo case, Durk allegedly texted an associate to avoid creating a paper trail that could link him to the crime. The leaked information also implies that federal authorities have evidence that Durk was attempting to move strategically and cover his tracks. Storyline Durk and his legal team are even more alarmed by the possibility that certain participants in the purported schemes may have been turned on by federal officials. According to one report in the information dump, AIRE, AJ's recorded confession was only one part of a bigger picture, with federal officials exploiting his cooperation to persuade others to turn on Lil Durk. In March 2023, AJ was arrested by the federal government After speaking with him, the feds obtained sufficient information to construct this RACO, so Airjam went awry and revealed that everything the feds required was there. The feds then persuaded others to begin telling the story and elaborating on the specifics of what transpired, including who called the hit, who was present, who traveled, and who paid for the credit cards. All of these point to a cascade of snitching, whereby one witness's testimony leads to others, until prosecutors have a complete picture of the purported conspiracy to show a jury. What's especially the federal government was pursuing him. According to one account, he was not taken by surprise and knew that Jam had snitched. In fact, he was anticipating that everyone would be arrested at his birthday bash concert in Chicago. Could explain why Durk allegedly planned several escape routes on the day of his arrest at Miami International Airport. If he knew that federal charges were about to be dropped, his attempt to disappear from the nation would be more reasonable. But in addition to the evidence that directly links Durk to the alleged murder-for-hire schemes, prosecutors also seem to be constructing a case around his alleged habit of placing bags on his enemies' heads. According to court filings, federal authorities asserted that Durk was paying people to kill the people who killed his brother, specifically Gangsta Disciples members, because Dathang's killer was thought to be connected to a group associated with Smashville. If this pattern of behavior is proven, it could be the leaked audio recordings and information about the federal government's evidence gathering have shocked the e-hip-hop community, and Lil Durk's fanbase on social media platforms like Reddit is expressing shock and disappointment, with many who had believed in Durk's innocence now questioning their position in light of these revelations. This discovery is devastating to Lil Durk's defense because it establishes a motive and modus operandi that perfectly aligns with the specific murder-for-hire charges he's facing. Others, however, are skeptical of the leaked information, pointing out that without official confirmation from the court or Durk's legal team, it's difficult to assess the authenticity or context of these recordings. Some fans argue that the recordings could be manipulated or taken out of context, and that Durk deserves the presumption of innocence until the situation is resolved. They were disappointed because they thought Durk was pushing for peace and positively influencing youth, but they felt he sacrificed his life for retaliation related to King Vaughn's death in 2020. Proven guilty in a court of law, Durk's attorney, Drew Findling, hasn't commented specifically on the leaked audio recordings, but has consistently maintained his client's innocence, emphasizing that the government's case is built on circumstantial evidence rather than direct proof of Durk's involvement in the alleged plots. Law enforcement sources, meanwhile, have remained tight-lipped about the leaks, neither confirming nor denying their authenticity. This is standard practice in high-profile federal cases, where prosecutors typically prefer to let their evidence speak for itself in court rather than trying the case in the media. But regardless of the official stance, the leaked recordings have undeniably changed the public perception of this case. What was once seen as potentially circumstantial now appears to be part of a comprehensive body of evidence that could prove difficult for Durk's defense team to overcome away from these leaks. Let's make sure everyone's on the same page about how Lil Durk ended up in this much trouble. Lil Durk's legal tango. Known to the streets as Lil Durk, Devontae Banks has been performing for Chicago as one of the most prominent voices in drill music. The Grammy winner behind hits like All My Life with J. Cole was having a great time. But behind the scenes, the federal government was assembling what they considered to be a strong case against the voice of the streets. The whole thing popped off on October 24, 2024, when US Marshals snatched Lil Durk up at Miami International Airport interview.
Locked up, nigga. I got the whole the mug show. No. No.
According to the officials, Durk was attempting to flee the nation aboard a private plane bound for Italy, not just to catch a flight. In addition, detectives asserted that Durk had scheduled one-way commercial flights to Dubai via Qatar and to Switzerland via New Jersey on the same day, making 3 different exit methods planned for the same day even more suspicious. Precisely how a defenseless guy walks. You sense me. So what had? There is no limit to the charges against Durk for allegedly fleeing to the border. On November 8, 2024, Durk was charged by a federal grand jury indictment with conspiracy to commit murder for hire, use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire that results in death, and carrying and firing firearms in furtherance of the crime. If he is found guilty on all counts by the jury of a violent crime that results in death, Durk faces a maximum sentence of life in prison, and as we all know, there is no release in the federal system. The allegations center on an alleged murder-for-hire conspiracy that targets musician Wando Rondo. The prosecutors claim that was not a simple street feud, but rather a planned murder. In retaliation for the 2020 murder of King Vaughn, Quando, Rondo's associate Timothy Liu killed Durk's close friend and musician, signed to his own family label. Prosecutors claim that Durk was resolved to use violence to resolve the unrest caused by Tim leaks in the rap industry, putting a bag on Quando Rondo's head and promising him bread and possibilities. To anyone who is prepared to slide for the Fed's 5 affiliates Kayvon London Grant, also known as Cuz, and DeAndre Dantrell Wilson, also known as Diddy, claim that Von's alleged hit occurred in Los Angeles on August 19, 2022. Keith Flocker Jones, David. When it was revealed that Quando Rondo was lodging at a hotel in Los Angeles, with Durk allegedly funding the stay, Brian Lindsay, also known as Brown Eyes, and Asa Houston, also known as Boogie Operation, they secured the Blix, including what prosecutors say is a fully automatic machine pistol, flew to California, and seized 2 expensive whips and ski masks. According to the federal indictment, the hitters followed Quando Rondo and his cousin Xavier Robinson, also known as Lul Pab, as they drove through Los Angeles in a Cadillac Escalade, stopping them at several locations. At a gas station, the squad allegedly let it rain, dumping at least 18 shots. The government's case seems so strong because of the mountain of evidence they claim to have stacked up, in addition to the mountain load of evidence. Robinson was the victim of the worst of it and died in the attack. But Quando Rondo and his sister, who were also in the car, survived unharmed. Prosecutor are seated on investigators' alleged discovery of a credit card used to reserve flights and a hotel room for the co-defendants. Durk entered a not guilty plea to all charges at his arraignment in Los Angeles on November 14, 2024. His legal team, headed by well-known lawyer Drew Finding, known as the billion-dollar lawyer, has been upholding his despite Durk's team's claims that he is innocent. The voice of the streets has been detained without bond since his arrest on December 12, 2024, when U.S. Magistrate Judge Patricia Donoghue rejected a motion for pre-trial release, stating that Durk's resources and potential for escape were too risky. His legal team provided a substantial bond package that included prosecutors said Durk was breaking jail regulations at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles by making more unauthorized three-way calls because he had $2.3 million in equity from 2 Georgia cribs and $1 million in cash from Sony Music, but the judge wasn't trying to hear it. The accusations of violating the jailhouse code would eventually come back to haunt Durk in ways no one anticipated, but the case against Lil Durk doesn't end with the Quando Rondo scenario in a bizarre turn that further complicates his legal issues. A recently released FBI document submitted in Chicago in 2023 suggests that Durk may have ties to Stephen Mack, 24, was shot in January 2022 and is thought to have been a shot caller in the Smashville faction of the Gangster Disciples, according to the paperwork. Mack was fatally shot as he was leaving a youth center in Chicago. The FBI document cites text messages and social media posts about Durk's payment for Mack's murder was allegedly retaliated against by Durk for the 2021 murder of his brother, Dante Ang Banks. Although Durk has not been charged in this case, prosecutors used this affidavit to argue against his pretrial release in the Quando Rondo case, pointing to what they say was a pattern of alleged violent behavior. Additionally, federal prosecutors have claimed that Durk offered bags for other hits. These accusations, which include one that targets a witness's family member, were made during his detention hearing in December 2024 to highlight why he poses a risk to the public, as if the criminal charges weren't enough. However, detailed specifics are still scarce. Additionally, Durk is the target of numerous wrongful death claims pertaining to violent events that are purportedly connected to him and F on February 24, 2025. In October 2024, the mother of Chicago rapper FBG Duck Carlton filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Durk, his business manager, and a related company in Cook County Court in Chicago. According to the lawsuit, Durk was responsible for the targeted attack that killed Savia Robinson in the 2022 shooting in Los Angeles. Weekly sued the estate of Durk F. King Von and a number of music businesses for wrongful death. Even though Durk has faced significant legal obstacles, the lawsuit claims that he and F planned a campaign of violence against FBG Duck, including placing a $100,000 bounty on his head, which resulted in his shooting death in the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago in August 2020. Actions in the music industry. While he was behind the wall in an Instagram post on March 27, 2025, his 9th studio album, Deep Thoughts, was released on March 28th. I wasn't going to post this, but then I realized that the streets need it. It's difficult to be outside with you when I drop, but I know that I will feel your love and energy through these walls. Thank you, Durk wrote. You guys have supported me through everything, and I'm coming home sooner than before. I tell these experiences to ensure that our voice is heard, along with other information that has surfaced. The leaked audio recordings that have recently surfaced on the streets seriously throw doubt on Durk's upbeat message to the fans, altered this lawsuit's course in ways that no one could have anticipated, and the ramifications of these leaks go well beyond the court action against Durk. They also raise important concerns about his career's future and his legacy in hip dance. First, legal professionals predict they may greatly bolster the prosecution's case if they were admitted in court. The truth is that federal prosecutors have a conviction rate of over 90% in cases that proceed to trial. And evidence such as wiretap conversations and snitching testimony can significantly harm a defendant's chances of winning the case. Usually refrain from bringing cases unless they are certain they can obtain a conviction, considering the substantial amount of evidence in this instance. With 20,000 pages of reports and 230 gigabytes of digital material, they appear to have assembled a strong case against Durk and his co-defendants. Drew Finley, a well-known lawyer on Durk's defense team, is expected to contest the admissibility of the stolen recordings, cast doubt on the veracity of any spies, and claim that the government's case depends too much on the interpretation of song lyrics in social media posts, a contentious practice that detractors like Eric Nielsen, a professor at the University of Richmond, have called dangerously careless. But even with a robust defense strategy, the amount of evidence is overwhelming. The particulars of the allegations make it difficult to defend against this case if found guilty on all counts. The grim fact that Durk might receive a maximum sentence of life in federal prison worries his followers and the hip-hop world as a whole. There are several who are certain that Lil Durk won't survive this given instance.
I don't necessarily think you're just beating a Fed case like that. I think there's gonna be a difference where, 5 years, you'll survive that. 10 years, you'll survive that. An 80-year sentence plus life, you're not making it.
Durk is also dealing with a number of wrongful death lawsuits, including one brought by the mother of Savia Robinson Lulu Pab, and another by the mother of FBG Duck. These civil cases could potentially cost Durk millions of dollars in damages, which would further compound his legal troubles. Speaking of financial ramifications, let's get started. Think about how Durk's legal issues affect his career. Since his arrest in October 2024, Durk has been detained without bond, which has prevented him from touring or engaging in many of the activities that normally bring in money for artists. However, in March 2025, he released his album Deep Thoughts from Behind the Wall, and the project's promotional opportunities were. His incarceration has severely limited him. In addition, legal fees can quickly mount up in a high-profile federal case like this. Finding a top-tier attorney like Drew Finding is not inexpensive, and the case's complexity means that his legal team will have to work extremely hard for his defense. Beyond the immediate financial impact, there's the query about Durk's legacy and position in hip-hop history. Prior to his arrest, Durk was considered one of the most important figures in drill music, having won a Grammy and released several successful albums. However, his legacy now runs the risk of being defined by these accusations rather than his musical contributions, and the case has been compared to other well-known legal hip-hop cases, such as Young Thug's ongoing RICO trial in Atlanta and Durk Young. Thug's accusations that his music collective YSL operated as a criminal enterprise have sparked discussions about how the criminal justice system handles hip-hop artists and whether prosecutors unduly target rap music and its culture. In Durk's case, the evidence seems to go much beyond his lyrics, despite critics like Eric Nielsen claiming that prosecutors like Owen rap lyrics as literal confessions, failing to acknowledge the artistic expression and role play that are essential to the genre. Snitch's testimonies and the purported wiretap chats and text messages all suggest real-world activities as opposed to creative expression. This makes it more difficult to claim that he is being singled out for harassment based only on his music or cultural identity. But the case still highlights significant issues regarding the between hip-hop and reality, and the accountability of artists for the messages they convey through their music, as many drill artists have done with Owen, accused of acting out those lyrics in ways that have had terrible real-world repercussions once they were wrapped around violence and street life. These accusations have an impact on many individuals who are associated with Durk, both personally and professionally. His supporters, who have stood by him throughout his career, are now grappling with the likelihood that, in addition to the victims and their families, their favorite musicians may have been involved in other killings. His family, including his children, may have to endure decades or maybe the remainder of his life in prison. Andrea Laquila Robinson, the mother of Savia Robinson, sued Durk FBG for wrongful death. In the same way, Durk's mother has pursued justice for the death of her son, which she claims was planned by Durk and F. Due to the fact that Durk's murderous intentions are purportedly important to the deaths of King Vaughn and Dante Dethang Banks, their families are also impacted. In the run-up to Durk's trial in October 2025, the cycle of violence and retaliation that these killings symbolize has brought incalculable suffering to several families and communities. The decision will probably depend on a number of variables. First, court filings raise the question of whether his co-defendants will assist prosecutors in exchange for leniency. Co-defendant DeAndre Dantrell Wilson has asked for a pre-plea sentencing report, suggesting that if Wilson or other co-defendants consent to testify against him, he could consider a plea bargain. Additionally, given the strength of the evidence against him and the possibility of a life sentence if convicted, Durk might consider seeking a plea deal rather than going to trial. This could greatly strengthen the prosecution's case. However, any plea would probably require him to admit guilt, serious charges that could permanently harm his reputation and legacy. On social media, users have debated the implications of the leaked recordings. Some have suggested that they validate what many had long suspected, while others are still holding out hope that Durk can somehow get past these charges. People's opinions appear to be divided between those who think Durk's actions were justified by street loyalty, especially his desire to exact revenge for King Vaughn's death, and those who view his alleged involvement in murder for hire plots as a tragic waste of his talent and potential. The case also raises more general questions about hip-hop violence and the real-world repercussions of the rivalries and beefs that Owen expresses in his lyrics and on social media. Hip-hop conflicts can escalate from diss tracks to actual violence, with devastating results, as demonstrated by the feud between Durk's F Collective and Wando Rondo's crew. Some critics contend that the industry itself is partially to blame for glorifying and monetizing these beefs. Regardless of one's stance on these topics, some argue that the music only reflects these realities rather than generating them, pointing to the systemic difficulties that contribute to violence in the neighborhoods from which many hip-hop musicians originate. It is evident that the effects of violence from King Vaughn's passing to Savia Robinson's murder to Durk and his co-defendants' possible life in prison, the case of Durk's claimed murder for hire schemes shows a tragic cascade. In the upcoming months, as this case progresses, we should find out more about the evidence against Durk and his co-defendants, the tactics used by the prosecution and defense, and its possible effects on the hip-hop business overall. Meanwhile, Durk is still being held at the Los Angeles Metropolitan Detention Center in anticipation of his trial in October. His album Deep Thoughts is still available for streaming on various platforms, and his followers are still active on social media, discussing whether he is guilty or innocent and making predictions about his future. The question of whether he did it or not has been completely changed by recordings. The feds now have receipts on receipts, and the problem with the federal system is that they don't move until they are positive they can secure a conviction. The 90% conviction rate isn't merely for show, it's because they build their cases meticulously before they ever bring someone to court. Hip-hop artists who started rapping about street life are increasingly caught between the image they've built and the actual repercussions of their lifestyle. However, in Durk's case, if these accusations turn out to be accurate, it goes beyond simply discussing it in songs about allegedly planning acts of violence and funding them. Prosecutors claim that Durk used his resources to continue the cycle of violence that has taken so many lives in his community, despite having the platform, talent, and opportunity to break it. This is what makes this case so tragic. For the sake of loyalty and retaliation, it serves as a clear reminder of how street fighting may become out of control and devour all in its path. What began with King Vaughn's passing now has the potential to result in numerous further fatalities, wrongful death claims, and the possible life incarceration of numerous people. As this case progresses, it is a lose-lose scenario for all parties. As the trial date approaches in October, we'll keep you informed of any updates. Until then, we're left wondering if Durk's statement about returning home stronger than ever is the hope of an innocent guy, or the wishful thinking of someone who is confronted with overwhelming evidence. If this video was enjoyable to you, click on any among those displayed on your screen to enjoy more.